Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back, everyone, to the Book Bunch. For any new readers or listeners, the Book Bunch series is a series that I do where I have a full shelf of unread or partially read books that I pick out each time and read it, give you an explanation on it, see if you'd enjoy it. So today I bring to you The Dreadful Tales of Prosper Redding by Alexandria Bracken. I've tried to read this book in the past and I've never really gotten through it, so today I thought it'd be a great day to try. It definitely does take a little bit to get into. It's kind of a slow book for most, but I definitely think some people would love it right away. Now, this book, of course, does take place in Salem, Massachusetts. At first, it takes place during the time of the Salem witch trials. Now, for anyone on Earth who doesn't know what the Salem witch trials were, they were this series of people accusing mainly women of doing witchcraft or confiding in the devil to get revenge on someone, and of course, they were on trial for it. There was no win-win situation. They'd push you on trial via drowning, and if you survived, you're a witch, and if you died, oh well, you're dead. And so they would end up hanging you, and it was just a horrible time. That is where our story will start off, and that's the base of our story. Now, in the story, I want to explain a few things. There are 4 different realms. We have the human realm, where this takes place in. We have the fiend realm, or the Fend realm, at least what I call it, Fiend world, where like evil humans who have made deals with devils or spirits are damned to serve for eternity. And then we have the spirit/ghost world, where evil spirits will go when they die, aka human spirits will go when they die. And then we have the realm of ancients, where creatures who have magic or has dealt with magics will go. With that being said, introducing these 4 realms, I want to introduce you a little bit to the characters, and then we'll move back to this plot point before we get into the actual book. We get introduced to Prosper, who will be our main character, and he has a twin sister named Pure. Pure and Prosper have 2 very different personalities. Pure is the type of girl to try at everything. She's the golden light of the family, while Prosper is there, and he is actually feared by his family. Reason why is because way back when, their great something grandfather, and that's no joke, that is what they say in the book. It made me laugh a little bit when I read it. He had made a deal with a demon who was, weirdly enough, only 800 years old, and his name was Alistair. Alistair was not exactly the forgiving type. He's one of the characters that we do meet in this story, which will not be favorous for Prosper later on when he does have to expel this demon and banish Alistair back into the fiend realm, or aka the demon realm, you could say. Now, the funny thing is Prosper didn't know there was a demon inside of him. He had just figured this out fairly recently into the story, and he was kind of this unknown host to Alistair. Alistair is actually this kind of demon called a malefactor, which controls over the body. It gets stronger each night, and there's not a lot of telling in the beginning of the book what Alistair can do. With the main bunch getting out of the way, we still got one more to introduce. This character comes in way later towards the middle of the book, when Prosper and Pure are outcast by their family in fear that they couldn't banish the demon in time. As they're running away, they find this little town, and they end up meeting their long-lost uncle, Barbas, and his daughter, Nell, who is a witch in training, which when I figured that out, I started dying laughing, because if you don't remember where this takes place, it is the Salem witch trials. So I found that quite entertaining, of course, when I was reading through this book. Now, with the main trio plus Alistair figured out, I think we can get into this book. Now, the book starts off with a word from Malefactor, which of course is Alistair. Now, this basically summarizes into there are 3 lessons that must be heard, obeyed, and remembered. These one day may prove crucial to your survival, human. Now, with that reference of human, of course, he is talking to Prosper. And the first lesson he will teach you is never trust a Redding. The family will whistle lies between their teeth, beg for mercy until their wiggling tongues tire. Do not give in. Cover your ears, your eyes, block out their cowardly stench. These are humans that broke contracts written in blood, the moment they feared for their fortune. Their traditions is one foolish. They are no family of yours. This is Alistair speaking to Prosper. This whole spiel is him speaking to him, saying that his family will warn them about Alistair, but Alistair is the one he should trust. Alistair does not hide anything, is what I found pretty early on in the story when we see this dialogue, as he talks about he wants revenge. That's the only thing he wants. He can give him anything and will take it back immediately. He does not care. He has the power. He understands this, and he is not one to be kindly about it, which will lead us into our first chapter, which is called Founders Day. So as we get into the start of this chapter, we meet this young boy named Prosper, who doesn't fit into this town. He doesn't get good grades. He gets downplayed by his family. He's not looked up upon. And the only person who really understands Prosper is Pure, his twin sister, which throughout the book and throughout the first chapter, we get hints of her having this heart condition that will or might eventually lead to some conflicts later on in the plot. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, is when Prosper always felt left out, and that is very, very seen at in the first few chapters of this book as the grandma who they don't necessarily hate, but they do quote her as the devil in a suit. Going with that, their family had always left Prosper out. They were a very rich and powerful family, thanks to their ancestors, but Prosper always felt like he was being left out of that, which he was, for the fact that they knew there was a demon involved. And this isn't some speculation on my part, as we see leading into chapter 5, there is this whole ritual being prepared after forcing Prosper and Pure to go down into this basement where they can have this ritual ceremony to try to free this demon that Prosper doesn't even know he has. And of course it doesn't work because we still got 28 more chapters left in the book. Later on, we will see that Prosper and Pure get shunned out of the town, where we get to meet this fun little demon named Alistair. Now, Alistair is able to take control over Prosper when he pleases. He is able to control his body movements or influence him. And he tries to trick Prosper by signing this contract. Now, this contract isn't like here's a piece of paper and a pen, come sign it. No, it is a soul-binding contract, so of course Prosper needs to be in his own mind to sign it. The reason Alistair is trying to make him sign this is because it gives him control into the modern world, or human world as it is. Even though Alistair is this tricky little monster and demon, he is probably one of my favorite characters, as he is able to make these funny one-off comments and jokes that have made me laugh. He mentions Shakespeare a lot in his one-off comments. And overall, it is just the funny, evil antagonist character. But enough about Alistair, let's get back into the main plot of the book. Now, where we're at is they have to flee from Salem, Massachusetts, where we are introduced to a whole nother family. And this is where he gets to start over. Prosper gets to be a different person. He's not the shunful outcast. He's not the shunful outcast anymore where no one has to not like him or leave him out of things. But as much as this new start is great for him, he still has to deal with the demon trying to take over his body. But now we are introduced to a character that I brought up before in character introductions, named Nell. Nell and her father, which is Prosper's and Pure's long-lost uncle. Now, this family with Nell and Barnias, who is the uncle, are actually a pretty normal family. Of course, they practice a little bit of witchcraft, but Nell still goes to school in this town. And eventually, which will lead Prosper and Pure also going to school. Now, by this time, we are now reaching into the 20s chapter, where we start getting into one of my favorite chapters, is chapter 22, A Kind Heart, a Sharp Knife. This chapter actually took me aback because the previous two chapters had been basically Prosper and Alistair fighting for control over the body and trying to get their minds straight, going back and forth with Alistair trying to take over and Prosper trying to release the grasp from the demon's control. And so when I had basically flipped to chapter 22, I was ready for a whole fight to go in between them, but it started off with a theater call audition, and I was taken aback, and I was like, what is this? What I found out is Nell had wanted to do this theater audition of The Crucible. This theater teacher, Madame Drummer, as they call her, would not let Nell audition for a part simply because she was a woman. And this might be a lens you look at it from a feminist lens, but I found it very, very funny because Shakespeare didn't even let women audition back then. And that was also brought up in the book later on. I just found this chapter and the next one pretty funny because they were kind of just this one-off story that broke from it that was mentioned in the middle of the book and just got brought back in. But chapter 24, of course, leads back into the fight of Prosper and Al. Now, unfortunately, I will not spoil the ending of this book because this book has no ending. This book gets left off on a cliffhanger, which leads into the second book, The Last Life of Prince Alistair, also by Alexandria Bracken. That episode should be coming out in the next 2 weeks if you want to listen to that and how this story ends. But now, before we go, I do want to get a little bit into our author, like I always do at the end of our segments, Miss Alexandria Bracken. She currently lives alone with her dog. She was born on February 27, 1987. She's now 37 years old, and if you ever hear the name Alexandria Bracken and it sparks your curiosity, or you go, I think I've heard that before, because she has wrote 2 marvelous best-selling books. She has written many more other books, but the 2 best known are Lore and the Darkest Minds series, if you ever read that from her. She is a fantasy writer that adds a little bit of LGBTQ plus elements in her stories. If you ever read Lore, that's the main point of her best friend is being gay. But she is a fantasy writer, and what actually sparked her to write The Dreadful Tales of Prosper Redding was actually a story she wrote about a guy who got hung back in the Salem witch trials known as Redding. This was a made-up story in her mind, but I found that really, really cool when I was looking the story up. She got her inspiration for writing fantasy books from Star Wars, fun fact, which I wouldn't even think about. I'm not a Star Wars listener. I'm not a Star Wars enjoyer. Watched the first movie, fell asleep to it. Not my favorite series in the world. But I found it really funny because as far as I know, the only tale of magic in there is the Force. And of course, I could be totally wrong. And if anyone watches Star Wars, please don't quote me on that or kill me on that, because I could definitely be wrong. She graduated from the College of Williams and Mary in Virginia, and she was a double major in English and history, which is honestly seen throughout her writing styles by tying in historical eras with her own fantasy twists. And she tends to, even just looking at her other books, she tends to very distinctly separate her characters by different fonts almost, or bolding the fonts, as we see with Alistair in the book of The Dreadful Tales of Prosper Redding. Alistair has this bold font that appears out, or in or in many as her other books, as they are seen to be completely separated from the main characters, those spin-off little characters, which I find really, really interesting in her writing style. But with that, I will have to let you guys go. I hope everyone enjoyed this short little segment of our podcast and is interested in the dreadful tales of Prosper Redding. Next week, I will be going over the second book in this series, The Last Life of Prince Alistair, if anyone's interested in this book. And with that, I hope everyone has a great night, and I will see you all next time.